March 16, 1968. An American helicopter drifts low over the rice fields of Vietnam. From the sky, the pilot expects to see a battlefield, enemy fighters, gunfire, resistance. But instead, he sees something else. Bodies, women, children, old men, lying motionless in the dirt. No weapons, no soldiers, no battle, just civilians, and American troops standing among them. The pilot's name was Hugh Thompson, a young American helicopter pilot, just 24 years old. He had been sent to scout enemy positions. Instead, he had stumbled onto one of the darkest moments in American military history, the My Lai Massacre. And what he did next would change everything. In war, soldiers are trained to obey orders, to follow commands without question, to trust that those above them know best. But sometimes, the bravest thing a soldier can do is refuse. Thompson made a decision that almost no soldier would dare make. But to understand what he did, we first have to understand why those soldiers were there at all. This is the story of the pilot who defied his own army. By 1968, the Vietnam War had become a war without clear battle lines. No front lines, no clear enemy. American soldiers moved through jungles, rice fields, and villages, searching for an enemy that often seemed invisible. The Viet Cong did not fight like a traditional army. They hid among civilians, disappeared into villages, into farms, into the jungle. For many American soldiers, every farmer could be a fighter. Every village could be a battlefield, and every step could trigger a hidden bomb beneath their feet. They fought a war of traps, hidden mines buried in dirt roads, pungy stake pits concealed beneath leaves, snipers who fired once, then vanished. Every week, soldiers were wounded or killed by enemies they never even saw. Fear slowly turned into anger, and anger began to blur the line between enemy and civilian. In March 1968, American intelligence believed they had finally located a Viet Cong stronghold, a small farming village called My Lai. Military reports claimed it was controlled by the 48th Viet Cong Battalion, one of the most feared units in the region. The mission was straightforward. Helicopters would drop Charlie Company into the village at dawn, sweep through, destroy the enemy, leave nothing behind. But there was one critical problem. The intelligence was wrong. Just after sunrise, dozens of helicopters lifted off toward My Lai. Inside them were soldiers from Charlie Company, many of them barely adults. They had lost friends to mines, to ambushes, to an enemy they could never clearly see. Now they believed they were flying straight into a Viet Cong stronghold. They expected a fight. They expected resistance. Instead, they found farmers preparing breakfast, women carrying water, children running through the fields. No enemy fighters, no gunfire, nothing. And in that silence, something snapped. The shooting began. High above the village, a helicopter circled slowly. Inside sat Hugh Thompson. His job, observe the battlefield, mark enemy positions, report what he saw. From the air, Thompson saw bodies piling up in the ditch. He saw soldiers chasing villagers through the fields. He saw children running for their lives. The young helicopter pilot realized something terrible. If no one stopped this, everyone in the village might die. And in that moment, he had a choice to make. While circling the village, Thompson spotted a wounded Vietnamese woman lying in the grass. She was still alive. He landed nearby. Thompson hoped American soldiers would help her, but moments later, a soldier approached the woman, raised his rifle, and shot her. Thompson realized this wasn't confusion. This was a massacre. Soon Thompson spotted another group of villagers, about a dozen civilians crouched inside a small irrigation bunker, unarmed, nowhere to run. Moments later, American soldiers began walking toward them. Thompson understood exactly what was about to happen. If those soldiers reached that bunker, no one inside would survive. In that moment, he made a decision that no soldier is trained to make. Thompson landed his helicopter directly between the soldiers and the civilians. American soldiers stared in disbelief. Thompson turned to his crew, door gunner Lawrence Colburn, crew chief Glenn Andreotta, and gave them an order that stunned them. If the American soldiers fired on those civilians, they were to open fire on the Americans. For the first time that day, an American gun was pointed at American troops. With the soldiers held back, Thompson approached the bunker. The villagers inside were terrified. Some believed the helicopter had come to kill them. It hadn't. Thompson called for reinforcements. Other helicopters were summoned. One by one, civilians were lifted out of the village, away from the killing, away from the smoke, away from the bodies. By the time the killing stopped, hundreds of civilians were dead. Men, women, children, even infants. The village of My Lai had been almost completely destroyed, but the actions of one helicopter pilot had prevented the massacre from becoming even worse. When Thompson returned to base, he reported everything: the executions, the burning homes, the killing of unarmed civilians. But instead of praise, his report would ignite a controversy that shook the United States Army to its core. In 1969, an American soldier named Ronald Ridenour wrote letters to government officials and members of Congress. He had heard what happened in My Lai, and he refused to stay silent. His letters forced an investigation. Soon after, journalists uncovered the truth. Photographer Ron Haberle's images from My Lai spread across newspapers around the world. Bodies in the dirt. They were impossible to ignore. The photos shocked the American public and forced the military to launch a full investigation. More than 24 soldiers were investigated. Only one was convicted: Lieutenant William Calley. In 1971, he was found guilty of murdering civilians at My Lai, sentenced to life in prison. But the sentence was reduced, then reduced again. Calley ultimately served 3 years under house arrest. For years after the war, Thompson was condemned by fellow veterans, by some members of Congress, criticized for pointing his gun at American troops, for doing the right thing. But history would judge him differently. In 1998, 30 years after the massacre, Thompson and his crew were finally awarded the Soldier's Medal for their courage. Lawrence Colburn, Glenn Andreotta, Hugh Thompson, 3 men who chose to land when everyone else kept flying. War tests the limits of human morality. It strips everything away until all that remains is a choice. On March 16, 1968, Hugh Thompson made his. He landed his helicopter in the middle of a massacre, pointed his gun at his own army, and saved the lives of people he had never met. Not because he was ordered to, because he decided to. That is what courage looks like.